The duties of MPs. This is the second talk in this theme. The duties, as I said, are divided somewhat artificially into various compartments, and this talk will centre on constituency duties of MPs. There's a natural lead-in from my previous talk about duty to party, because I ended up talking about the duty to party in constituencies in that talk. So you can see how much an overlap there is. Nevertheless, constituency duties of MPs has its own centre of gravity. I'll focus on Oxfordshire largely, for no better reason than I live here, or live there. Oxfordshire is not typical of the country as a whole, but nowhere is. Wherever you take, there isn't such a thing as an absolutely typical bit of England, and even that wouldn't be typical of Wales or Scotland. But at least Oxfordshire is not untypical of the southern counties of England. Its MPs are still mainly Tory or Conservative, 4 out of 6. It's a largely rural constituency with some suburbia. It's got a display of light industry and some high-tech industry. It hasn't got mines and steelworks or shipyards, probably ex-mines and steelworks of the old industrial areas. Now there are 2 non-Tory MPs in Oxford itself, a Labour man and a Liberal Democrat. What is untypical is that Oxford, the county town, has a famous factor. It's far better known worldwide than Leicester, the county town of Leicestershire, because of Oxford University. It's also got at least one famous MP in Mr. Heseltine of Henley, the former Tory Deputy Prime Minister, and who famously managed to get Thatcher defeated in 1990 in the premiership, in the elections for leadership of the party, although he didn't win himself in the end. While Andrew Smith of Oxford East, where I'm sitting now, is less famous, but is now a junior cabinet minister in Mr. Blair's Labour government. But however well known MPs are, even the most august MP must nurse their constituency. This applies to Mr. Heseltine and to Mr. Hurd, the former Foreign Secretary, when he was, up to 1997, MP for Witney in West Oxfordshire. So, even Mr. Hurd, I studied some of them, hold constituency surgeries, where all constituents can come and pour out their troubles. The metaphor is very much from medicine, of course, and if your troubles are within the scope of politics, the MP will help you, or say he will. If you go to him and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, my girlfriend's left me and I'm lovelorn, what do you think I ought to do about it?" he might well say, "Well, it happens to us all. It's not a political matter." Nursing also involves general taking an interest in local events, going to and opening flower shows, agricultural shows, exhibitions of all sorts. The more marginal or electorally vulnerable you are, the better a constituency MP you have to be. Again, remember that cooperation with local activists, especially the councillors, shows the teamwork of local and national politics. They both need each other. All this, the nurse in the constituency, is often confined, and I personally find this fascinating, with showing MPs as warm human beings. Fascinating because it shows what is perceived to be, in the way MPs put their propaganda out, the ideal lifestyle of that time, whether it's the 1950s, 1980s, 1990s. As warm human beings, then, share in the lifetime and pleasures of the average person. You have photos and films of them, casually dressed and relaxed, with their happy families. They will have their spouse there at least, and children if possible, although not all MPs have children spouses. Edward Heath, a bachelor, who was years ago Tory Prime Minister and before that party leader, as a bachelor he had neither of those, and so he used to be photographed having picnics with other people's families, saying they were close friends of his. Well, one Oxford MP in the 1980s, Steve Norris, did other things. He went on a sponsored slimming, and a local charity benefited. This shows, what a regular guy was. He's worried about his weight, like lots of people. And later, however, Mr. Norris was exposed as a womanizer of quite some energy. He'd left Oxford by then, and to be exposed as a womanizer or irregular habits, this is a minus mark. It was always thought that MPs should be human, but seemingly at least respectable. Nevertheless, this may be less of a problem now than it was as late as 15 years ago, say 1984. Mr. Norris is currently quite likely to be the Conservative mayoral candidate for London, and his disgraced predecessor in that role, very recently disgraced, Lord Archer, was selected in spite of his well-founded reputation as a rogue. If you look at Kensington and Chelsea, Alan Clark, the MP who recently died, was famous for being a womaniser, and also seemed to have broken the government's own rules when a minister about 10 years ago on arms exports. The new MP for Kensington and Chelsea is Michael Portillo, who has confessed to a rather long period of homosexual activity in his youth, but that hasn't stopped him getting back into Parliament. While in Portillo's former constituency, Enfield, he was defeated in 1997 by a man, Stephen Twigg, who was always openly and avowedly homosexual. Stephen Twigg is a Labour member. Now, the point about that is that, in my own experience, let's rephrase that, from my own observation, homosexuality would be a death mark, I think, as late as the early 1980s, if an MP came out, or a candidate came out and said he was homosexual, both in the Labour and Tory parties. He might still be the candidate, but he'd have been defeated. And overt womanising probably also, until very recently, but now it doesn't seem to matter. So perhaps what constitutes a warm and respectable human being has changed even over the past 15 years. The local papers, TV and radio, all the media, will publicise news about MPs, usually blandly and favourably. They can't afford to offend anyone in their limited readership pool, while a national newspaper may be stridently Tory, Labour or Lib Dem, well, I don't know any stridently Lib Dems, but in principle, a local paper can't be, because it's only got a certain number of readers, so it doesn't want to offend, say, 30 or 40% of them who are Tories by being aggressively Labour or vice versa. So they just like to write up anyone who's moderately locally famous, and MPs are obviously like that. They don't usually pose awkward questions. For instance, Tory MPs may praise local state schools, but usually Tory MPs don't send their own children to state schools, but in the independent sector. The local reporter's not going to come along and say, well, if Stanford Primary School is so good, why isn't your daughter, who's aged 8, there? Although John Patten, later Tory Education Minister, in fact did send his young daughter in the 80s to a local primary school. We must also look at special interest in the constituency. Special interests are not the specific personal concern of any individual, but they are general things, usually economic interest. If a particular type of agriculture or industry predominates in a constituency, MPs must speak up for that. Some MPs have been speaking up for farmers in the present beef crisis. But in the 1980s, Andrew Smith, not then a cabinet minister, of course, a young opposition MP, was fighting for the Cowley car workers in Oxford East, when it was thought the car works, which had been reduced in size, might be closed entirely by their new owners, Nissan. They haven't been, so he claims a success. That is a special interest. A constituency's personal problems, the constituents' personal problems, not a special interest. Neither are roads, houses or hospitals, because they're the same everywhere. You need them all over the country. A hospital is a special interest from the point of view of its employees. You know, Headington in Oxford East is many people are employed in the hospital system. It's not a special interest from the point of view of the constituents. Of course, there's an element of humbug in displayed MPs as the man or woman in the street. Practically all MPs are richer, better educated, more ruthless, more energetic and more ambitious than their average constituent. And at one time, this was often built up. MPs or ministers were supposed to be rather remote, maybe elitist figures. This would have been the posture in the different ways of Mr. Gladstone and Churchill, two rather different people. But now this deference factor has gone. MPs, even the Prime Minister Tony Blair, have to be or appear what the Americans would call a regular guy or regular gal, i.e. terribly normal. And that's the way modern day electors seem to like it. It aligns with the fact that the old social class structure or the deference structure has broken down. But in fact, don't be fooled. There are still, MPs are still very ambitious, and they are usually, in fact, much richer than the rest of us.